Hey everybody, I'm Corey Heath,
I'm James Kyle.
and we're going to talk about game design. Uh, Specifically, we are going to talk about the design of puzzle RPG games, or maybe a little bit more general than that. I'll probably want to generalize from there, but that's a good
Yep.
handle to hang it on right now. And I have a screed. Uh,
Okay.
So I'll start us off by talking a bunch, and then you can
Okay.
like interject, interrupt, or take notes about
Yes,
things.
that's what I need to do.
Yeah,
Seriously.
about things that we should talk about after the screed is done. So,
Well, I thought you were. I thought I should take notes on it. What is going on? Are you
yep,
being robbed?
robbed. Yeah, but the door's
Whatever.
locked.
You don't have anything to take anyway,
No,
so
no,
that's the secret to not getting robbed. By the way, is to
totally.
not have anything worth taking.
Yeah, man. This Buddhism thing is so great.
Seems like they were onto something, doesn't
I
it?
think, yep, they had it all figured out.
Yeah.
Um,
Street away.
all right, okay. So last week we talked about important games, kind of like we talked about why we would choose to one project over another, why we, what we're interested in doing. Um, And I think kind of important. The word we use the word importance a lot, and that maybe wasn't the best focus. It doesn't necessarily capture what some of the things I think. Um, so today, I'll take a little bit of a different angle on it and say
Okay.
that I'm interested in. I just want to have a reason for doing a game, a reason that's compelling to me, right? It doesn't have to be that I want it to be popular or make money or whatever. Like Blockhouse is a really good example, right? I had a reason to do that, a satisfying reason to make that game, and so and as I'm thinking about it, I think that there are some reasons why I would enjoy making a puzzle RPG style game. Uh, and So we'll talk about that. Another thing to say is I like computer games more than I like board games. Uh, how do you feel about that? What's your take on that?
Like
Compli-
more than.
More complicated?
It's a little bit complicated. Uh,
All right, then forget it.
I like them. I like it in different ways,
Okay.
maybe.
Okay, that's interesting.
But like more than, I don't know if I can say
Not
like
sure.
more than. So there are some
Okay.
board game experiences that I feel like I can't get in
Yeah.
uh, in electronic games, including electronic versions of board games,
Yeah. Okay. So that's a thing I
which is
want to.
kind of a strange one, right?
Right. Right. Um,
Like for example, I like to play Carcassonne, for example. I enjoy
okay.
that game,
Okay.
but I
Cool.
don't play the electronic version.
Yes.
I don't like to play the electronic version. I don't know. That's a little bit weird, right?
No, I mean this
It's
is
the same game,
this is
I
part
guess.
this is totally on my list. I'm looking at a list of my screed on Steam
Okay,
right
all
now.
right.
It's exactly what I'm. So that's so. As much as I feel like I probably ultimately like computer games more, there are these things that I like about board games. Obviously, I mean, we've both designed, but I mean, I like board games. Also hate them. We'll have to
Yes,
talk about. We still need to talk about that someday. Um,
absolutely.
yep. And
Wait. Does that mean you don't hate video games?
I not as much. That's part of what I'm saying.
I do.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a more
Cool.
general hate.
Yeah. Good.
In fact, that's
Um,
that's my superhero name is General
yeah.
Hate.
There's 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 this thing that people say sometimes about pizza and sex, right? They say even when it's bad, it's good, right? Which
Do they?
they do
Okay.
say that. I don't actually.
Maybe in your state.
No. Yeah. No, I have to admit I don't actually I don't agree with this sentiment actually. But with video games, I'm a little bit like that. Like even though I often hate them and I feel like so often they don't do it right. Like they don't do the way I want them to do it, you know.
Yeah.
And yet I I just still like them in a way that, like, even more so than like movies, I disappoint me these days. And like, I mean, I don't spend that many hours watching movies anymore, and most other forms of entertainment. But for whatever reason, I'm a degenerate video game player.
Okay, now I can understand that because I'm
Yeah.
a degenerate movie watcher.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a very similar feeling. I will watch a movie because I haven't seen it before. That's the reason for
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah. I don't have that.
Yeah, I do.
I'm more like that with video games. Although video games, I I quit them right away if they do if I'm like, I'm not liking this. So this is one thing I like
Okay.
about video games over board games. Board games, I get stuck. I get stuck for an hour playing a game that I knew in the first 5 minutes, a new game that I hadn't tried before, and it's a slog. I'm like, I'm obligated by these other people,
Yes.
you know, to keep playing.
So many things
People,
are so much easier
yeah,
when there are no other people.
exactly. So, right, okay, so there are these things. Okay, so there's these mechanical things, and then you and I might differ on this. That's something I want to talk about. Um,
Sure.
there's a bunch of these. So my tastes are pretty simple in board games. I like these. I like what they call fillers, and
Hmm.
what I like to call super fillers. That's a term that Mike Siggins came up with. He's an old
Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
board game reviewer, big voice. Back in the day, I don't know if he still does that much anymore. But so that, yeah, so there's all these games like Cartagena, I really like, and Carcassonne, I like.
Yep.
Right, Lost Cities, Take It Easy is the one I keep talking about. No thanks. Exactly. There's a bunch of them that you say and I
We
still want
fell
to
off.
poke.
The first couple I really like, and then
Well, I still want to poke at why, what the
okay.
distinctions are, but it might not be interesting. Maybe it's just a one-off thing, like each individual game. But if there's some general principles there, I'd be interested in why you like some of those and don't like some other ones. Um, but so in general, there's this experience that those games give me uh, that I wish that video games gave me more of, right? So I think that and so there's this multiplayer thing to the board games, right? And that's actually not the thing that I'm caring about the most in this context, anyway. Like, so I think that match 3 um, is similar. Like I put these things in the same category. Like we talked last week about the different levels of and just plain old vanilla Bejeweled, right? Of like you can just look for any
Hmm.
match you want, or you can look for 4s and 5s, and then you can look for cascades, and you can look for setups, right? Like that's all the kind of thing that I like in Carcassonne, right? Or whatever for, and
Yep.
Take It Easy and all it really doesn't have as much to do with the fact that I'm struggling against people. Um, that the people make the board games feel more interesting and alive,
Okay.
right? Um, but I also like, Drop 7 and Match and these computer games, which are you're really just struggling against a system. Uh, so um, so there aren't. Right. So where am I going next?
You tell me.
Yep. Yep.
Look at your list.
Yep. Right. So my overall feeling is that so what we're calling it puzzle RPG, right? But let me generalize that to a game structure, essentially a solitaire game structure, where it's a two-tiered structure, right? The core game is something like Bejeweled, or ideally lots of other different things. That
Right.
actually hasn't happened in the genre, and that's really frustrating to me. But it could.
Yes. Well, okay. There are some other examples, and we
There
can
are.
point those out, but I don't want to stop your roll there.
Yeah, there are. But it's not. I mean, in the board game world, there are hundreds per year, right? And they aren't
Right.
all to my taste, for sure. But the fact that there are hundreds per year makes it more likely that there will be a couple to my taste, right?
You mean
Whereas,
hundreds of fillers per year? Or are you just talking about
I
board
think
games?
so. Or, but yeah, I don't know. I think there probably are 100. Am I
Of
overstating
fillers?
that?
Yeah, probably. I
Yeah.
would. That's probably right. I once calculated back in I don't know, early 2000s. So we're talking about 10 years ago. Even then, I calculated that there was about a new board game or card game coming out every day on average.
Yeah. 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 Okay.
So, uh,
Well,
yeah,
and
there were well over 300 per
yeah.
year. So out of those, if you say a quarter to a third are filler style, then yeah, I would say
Right.
100 a year. Sure.
Right. Um, and I mean it. And there's a lot of um, there's a lot of variety in game mechanical variety in the board game world. Like the designers seem to care. Like I mean more so than match three games is what I'm saying. Like there's for the last whatever 10, 14 years since Bejeweled came out. It's like
Hmm.
so many games have used match three in ways that, like in the board game world, people didn't use Carcassonne mechanics in this way, right? I mean, there aren't hundreds of games that use the base mechanics of Carcassonne. Um, this is probably a side. This is a side discussion.
Okay, I'm okay with it so far. Yeah,
Yeah,
we can keep this as a premise.
sure.
So I'm
Um,
with you.
I'm just saying this is one of the problems that I'd like to solve, right? Like I wish that there was more game mechanical variety of a certain style like single player computer games. And I think what I am proposing is that this model, the Puzzle Quest model, but I want to generalize from there, points to a rich genre that could address like there's room there for implementing a lot of different game mechanics, giving me experiences that are kind of like the experience I have when I play Carcassonne, but in a single player um, computer game kind of experience. Um, uh, Maybe my screed is already done. There's a lot more there, but that's where I'm starting with all this. This is my interest in the genre, is um, you know yeah, how to that two tiered structure I'm talking about, where you have some core game, and then you've got this, let's call it the over game or something like that, or the higher level game or whatever. And so within that higher level game, you play lots of little instances of, like, for instance, Puzzle Quest. You play a bunch of little instances of Match 3 that have a beginning and an end, and then that over game puts a layer of meaning on top of that. Like, it creates these higher level decisions. Like, suddenly you care. Like, when you're playing vanilla Bejeweled, you don't care whether it's a red or a blue match that you're making, right? Whereas
Right.
in Puzzle Quest, these things all have meaning. Like, that thing is gold, and it doesn't contribute to the current battle, but it contributes to the over game where you can go buy stuff. Um, And what I'm suggesting is that you could do this kind of game with a race game down there, with maybe like something like Reiner Knizia's Quandary, whatever. Take it easy. You could totally build a game around, one of this two-tiered system around a game like Take It Easy. I would love that, So why isn't this being done? And what are the qualities? What are the qualities of what qualities does the core game have to make it work? And what qualities does the overgame have to make it work? And how they relate? And so on and so forth.
Okay, so good question.
And do you think I'm generally on the right track? I mean, how much would you agree or disagree with this general vision?
I agree. I guess I don't. It sounded more like a question. So, am I agreeing with a question?
I'm asking if you agreed with the general picture. Yeah, go on.
Okay, so this with the two layers that you're talking about, right? So we have these two layers in a lot of other games, but your inside layer is less interesting, I think.
Okay.
So
examples?
Let's see. Yeah, let's think of an example. Well, okay, so in the board game world,
less interesting than Bejeweled, you're saying?
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. So if we just talk about board games, for example, and we look at adventure games that are board games, right?
Yeah.
You've got this overgame that's going on.
Yep.
And the activities that you have that are the smaller things that would equate to the Bejeweled a part of Puzzle Quest is usually just rolling a die or two.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
It's much less interesting, right?
Yep. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, so much so that
So we get the same thing in video games, right?
Yeah. Well. Okay. Examples.
So straight CRPG, like a straight CRPG.
Yeah.
To me. So maybe the classic examples would be any of the JRPGs, okay?
Right. Yeah.
That have the menu-based combat where you're all just the enemies are standing on the screen, your characters are standing on the screen, and on your turn you choose attack, and then your guy walks over and swats somebody and walks back, right?
Yep.
So that's classic JRPG style, which I do not like.
Yeah, I don't either. And because that core game is not interesting enough.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? Not only and as a side note, the fucking animations that you have to watch. I mean, not only is the core game not that interesting, but you have to wait. You pick that one menu item, and then you have to watch this big animation of the attack. So yeah.
Right. That's right. Now, so there are steps in between. I have played one, I can't remember what it was called, Shadow something, it was on PS2, that I actually played for a little while because what they added was you chose attack from your menu of options, and then you got a little golf dial. You remember the old style golf games where you would hit and it would swing out, and then you would hit for your power, and then it would come back and you'd have to hit within a little range. Right?
Yep.
Tap and then a timed tap. They added that, and that makes it much more interesting.
Yeah.
Makes it about as interesting as those old golf games, right?
Right. I mean, there's stuff.
So.
Right. Yeah, there's stuff I played in iOS. I don't know what the roots of this game is. I think it was what I played might have been a clone, but it was like a grid dungeon crawly thing. But then when you'd hit a monster, you'd have your sword would just move in a line across the screen and then come back. And you had to tap it, and so there were all sorts of, there were weapons that had a wider green space, but they moved faster, and so that would be like a broadsword. I don't know what it was,
Okay, so
and it's interesting.
The way I describe all of those things is as surrogate activities. Okay, so we have surrogate activities in all games, right? Attack, we are surrogate for attacking in Super Mario, which I shouldn't talk about because I've never even played it.
What?
But anyway, it's to like hit the jump button, so you're jumping on top of that's your attack, right? Or in
Yeah.
whatever, say Diablo 3, you hit your attack button. So that's your surrogate for for you doing your avatar's whatever he's doing
Okay.
action. So yeah, the choosing the menu item and then we get to Puzzle Quest where your surrogate is for the entire. You can think of there's a surrogate for the entire battle, right? You've got your board,
Yeah.
your match 3 board, and then within that you've got attacks. You're matching 3 skulls, right?
Yeah.
So I think what you're asking about is making more interesting surrogate activities.
Sure.
That's I think what that's the kind of genius of Puzzle Quest. I want to tell you a story.
Okay.
So I wanted to know what the hell we were talking about because we're sort of talking about what RPGs are, right? CRPGs, or that at least comes
Maybe.
into the
Okay.
well because and the reason I want to talk about this is because I've got my design goal document up here. Design goals for the
yep.
puzzle RPG I want to make, right?
Yep.
And so I'm like, I don't actually know if this counts as. Can we actually call this an RPG? I think you and I both know what we mean by a puzzle RPG, but so I'm like, I want to look this up. Well, so I go to.
Okay.
Let me tell my story now.
I know.
Wait, let me finish my story. So I go to Wikipedia. Go to Wikipedia, and if you're watching, you can play along at home. Go to Wikipedia and type in CRPG.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you think you get? Computer role-playing game? No. You get the Canadian Rangers. Okay. The Canadian Rangers are mostly like Inuit and whatever they're called, whatever the version of Native Americans are in Canadian, right? It's something nations. Oh man, my Canadian friends are gonna weep. But and they get a bolt action rifle because that's what works in the freezing north of Canada.
Okay.
Right? And they go out and patrol these wide open spaces. They get like a bolt action rifle and an axe. Go out and patrol. I want to play that. I hit this thing and I'm like, oh my god, I want so badly to play this as a game. I want the Canadian Rangers game.
As a CRPG, yeah.
As a CRPG, yeah.
It should just be called CRPG.
Exactly right. Yeah. How awesome is that? They were formed in 1947, just after World War II, right? So I like that. I want that. I want to be in 1947 and be one of the first Canadian Rangers. And I think you can get kind of close if you. Red Dead Redemption's got that one area of the map that's kind of like the Northwest Territories where they have the lumberjacks and stuff like that. So it would be kind of like that. Anyway, okay, that's the end of my story. I've got. Go ahead.
That's an interesting angle. It suggests some differences maybe between the way you and I are looking at it, because that's a sort of a thematic thing you're talking about, like.
Right. So we've got trappings. Yeah, is something else to talk about.
Right. Because I'm like my initial focus here is very much on game mechanics, right? Like, and it's like, and so I go back to this thing about like why aren't multiplayer games? I don't think that these board games translate well to the computer. Well, so let's maybe a rabbit trail, but let's go back to Take It Easy for a minute, right? So there's a reason why I think it to me it matters. It's important in Take It Easy that I play that game with other people, not necessarily in the same room. And I understand your position. I'm not trying to say your position is wrong on this.
You may. It won't bother me whatsoever.
Okay. Yeah, I know. So when you play because I have a version of Take It Easy on my laptop. I mean on my iPad right now. Ravensburger made a version of it, and it's got like it has Game Center multiplayer, which I have no interest in doing. Big pain in the ass. And I think it has Hot Seat. Again, no, I'm not. That's what a night. I don't want to wait. I don't want to pass this thing around to 3 other players before I take. It's crazy.
Okay.
And and then you can just play it solitaire, right? And as much as I love the game, it loses something. I don't sit around and play that game solitaire on my iPad. And one of the reasons is that my score is meaningless in that scenario, because depending on the 19 tiles, so there's a set of 27 tiles, and 19 of them come out randomly per game, and one at a time, and you have to put them somewhere on this hex board. And depending on which 19 tiles came out in whatever order, the average or highest possible score is going to be different on that run of the tiles, right?
Right.
And I have no idea what that average or highest score is. So,
yeah.
And so I would say, when I play with other people, it's not solely to be competitive. It's not because I want to crush my friends. I do, of course, but no, it's also because
You're such a jerk.
I know, yeah, but it's also because you see what I'm saying, right? Like, I want that average.
I do. So
I want this feeling.
you want to know, did I do well or not?
Exactly.
You just want to know whether or not you did well.
Did I do well?
Yeah. Okay. So
sometimes 150
two things.
score is really good. Yeah. And okay.
Yeah.
Continue.
So one thing that comes to mind is there is Drop 7 we've talked about recently.
Yeah.
Has a mode that is exactly that. It's called Sequence, right? So in Sequence, you get the same tiles as everybody else in the same order as everybody else, so that your score on the high scoreboard, you can compare it to everybody else, and it actually makes sense.
That's totally great.
But also what you reminded me of as you were talking there is Paradigm. Okay?
Yes.
So you get the same thing in Paradigm. Your score only makes sense in comparison to. I don't know if it only makes sense, but it makes the most sense in comparison to other people's scores. It's a little bit different because you can get a perfect score and take it easy, can't you? Yeah, there's a theoretical perfect score for any given sequence of tiles.
Right, but you don't know what that perfect score is for a particular run of tiles.
It can't be calculated at the end after you've seen all the tiles and the order they came out in?
Theoretically, it could be. I mean, you would need a sophisticated computer.
It's just that you're much
you would.
And you're much less likely to hit it as a player as you are in Paradigm or
Correct.
in some puzzles of Paradigm.
Yeah.
So anyway, that makes me wonder, would you be interested in playing Paradigm with other players sitting in the room and you're all getting to reveal one tile at a time or whatever?
Yes.
My answer obviously is no.
Right.
I am not interested in doing that.
Well,
I want to do it the way you've currently implementing it, where I'm playing by myself and then I see my scores afterward. And actually, here's something that I really miss in Take It Easy. In Paradigm, I can watch other people's games.
Yeah.
If I could go back and see the plays that everybody else made in Take It Easy, that might make it more interesting. Yeah. I actually think the base activity in Take It Easy is less interesting to me than the base activity in Paradigm. So there's that also.
Yeah.
But
right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on there. I also do think the base activity is more interesting. It's just different. It's different. I mean, Take It Easy is a lot more mechanical.
It's better.
Most of these things, okay. I mean, it's
for me, it's better.
I think for me it is too. So that's actually, I mean, so really that's kind of a side thing, because for those reasons, I don't feel the need to embed Paradigm in an overgame, for instance. Like for me, Paradigm is good enough and it's pure enough. I actually prefer the purity of just focusing on that core game, right? And
all right, how about Drop 7?
Or Take It Easy. Take It Easy. I mean, I'm claiming that I think I would like Take It Easy better.
Sure. Okay.
If it were, and yeah, I mean, to flesh it out a little bit.
If it had this context, if it had this second layer, you would actually take it easy.
Absolutely, better. And to flesh it out just a little bit more, I mean, maybe our listeners don't know Take It Easy, but like I'm imagining doing away with the score and having those pipes, like having a board where there are things around the edge of the board, and so when you get a 5 pipe here, that means you just got 5 gold. Or you just did an attack, or whatever. So
sure.
There's a lot of details, right?
Yeah.
But like so.
Yeah. Actually, Chris and I discussed that like a couple weeks ago.
But this is my overall point, and it doesn't just apply to Take It Easy. It applies to this whole thing. My point is that this is an alternative way to make that game meaningful, right? Like I'm saying, when I sit down and play it all by myself, it isn't meaningful enough. Like that score isn't meaningful to me. But you embed it in this system, and the system might not even answer always my questions of how well I did on one particular run. I might just have to guess at that, but even so, it's more fun that it's embedded. So I might say, well, I don't know if I did well enough, but if it's embedded in a roguelike system where it's like, you play like 50 games of Take It Easy in a row, in different whatever, maybe the board shapes are different, and this,
right.
You went to different places on the map and you collected stuff, and then eventually you die or you win because it's a roguelike. Then you'll start to get a feeling for, did I do well enough in those, right? It all becomes more meaningful, and that is the kind of game that I want to play, and I think that's a road towards making, computer game versions of board games that I want to play, and I think you could do it with Cartagena. I think you could do, you could do it. Even a game like Carcassonne might be too heavy. Like I would like for the core game to be relatively quick, because I want to be able to play like a couple dozen of them in one over game, But now we're getting into the nitty-gritty details of that kind of thing.
Yeah. Right.
Go on.
I think it's worth mentioning some of the other examples that are out there besides Puzzle Quest.
Sure.
Then, the closest one to something like that I can think of is called Sword and Poker. I've played Sword and Poker 2.
Okay.
So you know what 5x5 poker looks like, right? Where you're placing cards into a 5x5 grid, and the combinations score this way and this way, and the diagonals, right? Making poker hands. So Sword and Poker, it has this. Have you played it?
I have played it just a tiny bit. And I don't know why I didn't go back to it, or didn't. I don't know. Maybe it didn't grab me or something.
I don't love it. I like it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's something where you're playing this board, and after the board fills, it clears, and then you continue on a new board. You know what I mean? If you haven't finished off your enemy or died during the first board. So that's out there. I'm trying to think of some of the other puzzles that have been used. Well, you get some variations on the match 3.
That's what I mostly know about, and I don't hate that, but again, I would just want to rant a little bit that I wish that we could do not even variants of match 3. It's like, can't we do something?
No, that's why I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. The Dungeon Raid, which is the Trace 3.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Dungeon Raid. Yep.
So Dungeon Raid, and there are a couple other examples that are Trace 3 games. Dungeon Story, I think.
Okay.
Right.
Did you ever play? There's I believe it's called Geomancer.
Yes, I have.
So that's a rotatey thing. So it's a bit more. It's like a square grid version of Hexic, maybe. I don't think I ever played it. I only read about it.
I did play it. I played the trial on Xbox 360, and
just check out the trial.
Wasn't quite enough to do the trick for me. I'm not quite sure why. The puzzle, I think, was just less interesting to me.
Yeah. I have another one.
Okay.
Have you ever played? And this one I think I don't know how you will check it out because it costs money. So
What?
you don't do that. You might be. I think there must be.
Bastard.
There might be a demo of it. It's called. See, this is a big fail of this game because it's impossible to remember this terrible title. It's because it's branded. I believe it's a Might and Magic game. Capybara is the company that developed it.
Okay.
I think it's Clash of Heroes.
Yeah,
Might and Magic, Clash of Heroes.
Yeah. Is this like a match 3 where the gems are your units, your actual like people?
Yep. And
Okay.
when you do a horizontal match, it turns into a wall, and when you do a vertical match, it turns into an attack. And they're all the attacks are timed, so it'll put like a number 2, and so it's not gonna release until 2 turns later.
Yeah. I have played it. I did not love it.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I would predict.
Partly because of the scale.
And what?
Right. I don't want to have a whole bunch of guys.
Okay.
I don't want to be a commander of armies. I want to be a dude.
Yeah, I see.
Or dudette walking around on the map.
Yeah, I hear you.
There were some other things that I didn't love about it also. It wasn't just that, but that is the closest game that I have seen to. I think I told you one time I wanted to make a like match 3 Space Invaders.
Yeah,
right?
Totally. Yeah, I was thinking about.
That's the closest that I have actually seen. So I thought it was okay, but yeah, just another variation on match 3 that I didn't like as well as Puzzle Quest, for example.
Yep. Yeah, Puzzle Quest, and I've still only played the first one, so I'm looking forward to. I mean, I'm excited actually that I have the second one still to play one of these days. And so Puzzle Quest is my favorite of all of those, at least the match 3 one. Now go ahead.
Yeah, I would say Puzzle Quest 2. I prefer to Puzzle Quest 1, but kind of only slightly.
Okay.
But I really enjoyed Puzzle Quest. I enjoyed the first Puzzle Quest quite a lot. Enjoyed Puzzle Quest 2 just a little more because it fixed some of my complaints about the original Puzzle Quest. And but I also really enjoyed Dungeon Raid. I like that one a lot too.
Okay. Yeah.
The Trace 3.
I didn't like it as much. Well. Yeah, I didn't like it quite as much as you did, I think. I think I played it at the wrong time. My head wasn't in it.
Well, it's a little different too because that second layer is much more abstract than in Puzzle Quest.
I think that's. I mean, it seems like that's the kind of thing I would like. I'm embarrassed to admit that I didn't quite understand it. It confused me. Like maybe the presentation was too abstract, so I didn't quite understand that second layer. So I would probably like it more. Oh, that reminds me of another one. I believe it's 10 Million is what it's called. You might have seen Brett playing it. It's a match 3, but you slide rows and columns. There's a lot of things I liked about that. It's all time pressure-y. Right, it's all which I don't like.
I don't like that either.
Yeah.
But I should try that one. I should at least give it a try because it looked interesting. I saw Brett playing it and Jeff Stahl was playing it, and it does look interesting. But like when I went through a list of all of the puzzle RPGs that I could find, things that had time pressure, I kind of put in the not so interested pile.
Yeah.
But I still should try that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Tetris is time pressure-y, and I like it. But
And do you want a Tetris RPG?
Maybe. I'm not going to close the door on a lot of. I think the space is wide and hasn't been explored enough.
Okay, so why?
Why? Yeah. Well, really quick. To open it up even further, I'm going to argue that FTL and XCOM. So these are 2 of my favorite games of the last few years. Are XCOM, surprisingly, a AAA game, and FTL. I don't know that you would call either of them RPGs, which is fine. I'm not sold on the RPG isn't the most important part.
Right.
Both
I
both
agree.
both both FTL and XCOM have exactly the quality I'm talking about, which is this core game with an overgame on top of it. The core game happens relatively quickly, and you play dozens and dozens of them over the course of a single campaign. And they're both very board gamey. That core, very mechanic-y. In XCOM, you're moving some units around on a grid, exploring, and attacking. And FTL, I'm gonna keep. Have you gotten around to playing FTL, or will you?
No.
Okay.
Will I?
Yeah.
I maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
All I've done is watched a gameplay video on
Yeah.
YouTube or something like that, and I'm like,
I don't
fuck
think you'll
no,
like
that
it.
is way more work
I
than
know.
I want to do when I'm playing a game.
I know. I'm kind of shocked that I like somehow or other I got over that hurdle. And then once I was over on the other side, because it has so much of these other things that I really want, and it's by far the most creative, the most original of all the things that we've just named, in my opinion. I mean, they really designed just a really new game, and like in all sorts of ways. So it's certainly more involved than something I want to design. But I just wanted to throw both those examples out, just to to see how wide that space is, really. So back to the question.
Tell me.
Right.
Well, yeah, but I'm interested to talk a little bit more about XCOM because I'm not that familiar with it.
Okay.
Is it you're moving? Just describe it a little bit for me.
Yeah. The core game is a turn-based squad strategy game where, like, at the beginning of a campaign, anyways, you have like 4 units. You have 4 characters, and each one of them has essentially 2 movements per turn, and you can do them in any order. Like, so you can move twice, or you can move once and shoot, or move once and take what they call Overwatch. It's like move once and then Overwatch, so you'll be prepared you'll fire automatically if something moves through your field, like that. And you're on a I used to think it was randomly generated maps, but I think not now. I think they're actually hand designed. A little bit disappointing, actually. I think they should be auto-generated. I don't know. I don't know why they don't just use magic in their game design. Yeah, and then that map is and there's like a bunch of different mission styles where it's like a UFO has crashed, or they're terrorizing a city. The aliens are terrorizing a city. But yeah, so there's fog of war. So you're creeping out, and you're always trying to find cover, and it's totally turn-based. Like you take all your 4 actions, and then the aliens do their thing. And sometimes you see them, and sometimes you don't. Like for the first whole part of the level, you're trying to find them, and trying to not be in too horrible a situation when you do stumble on them, whatnot. And then the over game, which is weaker. I'm not that excited. I mean, so there's a bunch of things about XCOM I don't like. I don't like it as much as FTL. Campaigns take like 20 hours at least. Like it's a long form. It is a rogue. I would call it a roguelike, and I only have played it on what they call Iron Man, which is that there's no, because the normal mode is you can save and reload. So you can like try a battle, and if you fail, you can reload. You can back up and try it again. And yeah, I have no interest in that.
Right. So you're playing it with permadeath, essentially.
Yep, permadeath.
The way I play Skyrim.
Yes, that's more and more. That's mostly what I'm interested in games.
Hell yeah.
Yep. Yeah. But the over game, so unlike FTL and Puzzle Quest, the over game doesn't have any kind of a map of nodes that you're traveling to or any of that stuff. The over game is in your XCOM headquarters. There's a little spatial puzzle thing where you're building rooms in your You've got like a 4x4 grid or something, or 5x4 grid maybe, or 6x4, where you're adding. There's an elevator down the middle that you have to build. Then but you start adding laboratories and power generators, and and then there's a whole bunch of other stuff in the overgame, and it's a little much for me. It's too much. But your soldiers start ranking up, and you start actually choosing. There's very limited skill trees, where like at most points you just choose between one of two. Do I want this to have this character to be a good sniper or a good at cover or whatever? Like, and that that's all great, because then you build those characters up and then they die horribly once you've like ranked them all the way, and you have to then hopefully you've trained some rookies, and so there's a whole management aspect of like.
Okay.
And
that sounds like too much work for me.
It is. It's too much work.
So the couple things come to mind. So I, back in the day, whatever, on my C64, I did play some computer war games. So in a computer war game, those old ones, right? You had an overland, a big strategic map, and then when units overlapped, right? Basically, when the chits overlapped, then it would go to a tactical map, and you would have something that sounds very similar to that.
Yeah, sure.
So it's probably just derived, or it's a descendant of that. But the other thing
it's a descendant of war games for sure.
So we should mention the greatest CRPG, which you could almost call a puzzle RPG of all time, which was Pirates.
Oh man, yeah.
Right. Because the land battles, which I was never very good at, but the land battles are this tactical map.
Absolutely,
also.
yeah. And then Pirates is great because you've got like a treasure. Well, in various versions, there's treasure hunting games.
Yeah.
And that's
So you've got this.
Why? So why aren't there more? Why isn't there more of this?
Okay. So exactly, that's the question. One thing, of course, is that it takes a lot more.
Yeah.
It takes a lot more effort to design both layers, right?
Yep.
So that outside layer, and so if we look at Puzzle Quest again, the Match 3 portion is of roughly the same weight as any other Match 3 game, right? And where is all of your...
They didn't have to design that. They took it.
They did not have to design that, but outside layer has so much more work compared to the amount of gameplay that you get from that work, right? It's almost like a diminishing return.
Right.
That I think that's discouraging from like a commercial point of view or something like that.
Yeah.
You're putting in all this extra effort. Whereas you could just make another Match 3 clone and get like King does, Candy Crush, and make millions of dollars that way with less effort. So I think that's one reason. You've also got this temptation, which I think is correct to follow, of when you're designing your lower layer, of designing a bunch of different surrogate activities, right? So in Pirates, for example, you've got, I don't know, 4 or 5 different mini games, let's call them, whatever they are. So you've got your ship fighting, which was awesome. You've got your sword fighting. This is my sword fighting. And you've got there's the treasure hunting. There's a whole bunch. There's like 5 or 6 of these.
Yeah.
And so that expands your design even further, right?
Yeah.
Now the way they handled that in Puzzle Quest to keep that kind of more contained is all of those the lower level activities are all Match 3 based.
Yes.
And they just do variations on the Match 3. So your lock-picking puzzle is one style, one flavor of Match 3, and your fighting is a different, and your bashing doors and treasure finding and stuff. So I think that's another reason. It just
Okay.
becomes, I don't know,
Yeah. Well, so yeah. Well,
it's
I
a lot
guess
of work.
yeah. I mean, I guess that's one of the reasons I wanted to mention XCOM and FTL, is that they both are successful from what I can tell, and there are more coming, partially because of their success. So I have some hope that maybe there's some movement happening. We'll see where it leads. Um, that can justify the extra work. Right. So, but let's go even more into the nitty gritty of what, man. I think we might almost be at an hour already, and we're like just now getting to the stuff I really want to talk about.
Yeah, that's okay.
Um, well, actually, so let me ask you this. Uh, uh, so Fuji-san
Sure.
is the game that you have said that you're working on as a core game.
Correct.
Oh man, see, I wanna
For
talk
one of the surrogate activities.
for one of.
I have
Okay.
other puzzle designs. Yeah, I have other puzzle designs that I'm working on for the others.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, so yeah, so you think is this just a goal of yours? So you do want to have multiple, as much work as it is, you're interested in having multiple core puzzle systems going on.
Yes, I
Yeah.
am.
Okay.
Um,
So
I don't know how many yet. I have to, because I got to prototype each one of those and kind
yeah.
of perfect each one of those different puzzles. And yeah, so on my here, let me read you one line from my design goals document here. So hang on, it's up here. The main combat puzzle, because I will have a combat puzzle,
Okay.
is Fuji-san based. The other ones, though, I don't mind if they're less original. If they're based on other puzzle types, but as long as they're not just, as long as there's
Mm,
some twist to it. Kind of like the match 3 with a twist in
yeah.
Puzzle Quest.
Okay.
So they don't all have to be as original as I feel the main combat puzzle is.
Okay.
So go
Yeah.
ahead and ask.
Right. So I hadn't understood that from our previous conversation. For what it's worth, I kind of like the idea of focusing on one, like just trying to design one really meaty, well, relatively speaking, meaty core. Well, right. So here's the question I wanted to ask. Um, so Fuji-san, my feeling about Fuji-san has been much like I think you're feeling about my game, Blockers, which has been it's fine, right? And you have this other game, this unpublished game that's sitting in a drawer right now. And oh, that's nice. I like that. My monitor went off, and that's
What
better.
happened to your light? Is that what happened?
Yeah, things have gotten more intimate here in the on the James and
That's
Kory
right.
show.
It's happy hour now.
Yep.
It,
Yep. This is when we start talking about each other's games for real.
intimately?
Yeah. So you've designed a game called Diver Down. That is
Yes.
one of my favorite.
Great. Yes.
One of my favorite board games. It's one of my favorite board games.
Yeah,
Seriously.
it's one of my favorite board games too.
I mean, it
No,
really.
me too. I really like it.
And I love. That's how you really hit a target there. I mean, you should love your own game that way. And that. So my question, and it totally compares favorably with what I was calling these super fillers. I would kind of call it a super filler, I think. And with all the published games in this vein that I love, and I would love to play a puzzle RPG that had something like Diver Down at the core. Now, Diver Down is it's a multiplayer game, so that's one of the things I wanted to pick your brain about, is how do we go about translating, these, like, moving from these multiplayer, this is what I have experience in designing, is these multiplayer games, and like how do we turn those into solitaire? Like, I'm assuming, is Diver Down or anything like it it's not one of the systems that you've been considering, because you said you were considering other more
correct.
existing.
However,
so why is that? Why Fuji-san over Diver Down, and why not just build the entire game around Diver Down like mechanics?
Sure. So the first thing I would point out is they're very similar. Actually, Fuji-san and Diver Down are quite similar.
Okay, I didn't get that out of the game when I played it. So I think I just haven't played Fuji-san enough then.
Well.
Yeah.
So they both, the key in both of them is matching numbers to the distance to that number.
Yeah, I see.
Actually,
I got that.
In Diver Down, it's distance from that number.
Right.
But it's the same. It's similar.
Okay.
Actually, it's not that dissimilar from Drop 7, right? Drop 7, you're matching the number to the number of contiguous cells.
Right.
And for me, I'm using the distance to something, right?
Yep.
So that's what actually I kind of realized recently was that they actually have quite a bit of similarity to them.
That's interesting. Okay. I guess it's, in Diver Down, of course, I guess maybe I mean, they're both spatial puzzle games, but I mean, Diver Down, it just has it's like the fact that this board evolves and it creates such interesting shapes every time. That's a thing that I miss in Fuji-san.
Sure.
No, maybe, but I can see how Fuji-san I can see how it might be a better model for a battle system. I mean, part of where I was going with that is, like, does there need to be a battle system? Like, when I'm imagining this Diver Down based RPG, I wasn't imagining that there was combat at all in this game. That it's like an exploration, puzzly adventure game kind of thing.
Well, if I made a Diver Down based RPG, it would probably be an actual diving RPG.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I want. Like, and
kind of the overgame would look something like Endless Ocean or something.
Yes.
Where you've got your boat and you go down to this bay, and then because you've gotten rumors that there's a shipwreck down there or something like that.
Or like,
and then you would go to the inside game where you're actually exploring that wreck. Of
Everblue
course,
too?
actually.
Yeah.
Which was the original inspiration for Diver Down.
Yeah. Yeah.
It ended up a long way away from Everblue, but it does. Everblue, oh man, I spent a lot of time playing Everblue.
Yeah, I mean, I played it the last time I was at your place. I played it, and that was less than a year ago, and it still holds up for me,
It's got that really quirky, weird top layer, but
it is quirky and weird. Yeah. I mean, also another very side note, but I think there's quirky. I mean, Puzzle Quest, there's quirky, weird stuff. I don't really love the story layer. Like, I think it's kind of silly. I think it's kind of silly. But and the art even, I don't really like some of the anime-ish.
Dude, you're hitting stuff that's on my list.
Okay.
Nope, you're absolutely on my list.
Okay.
Of things here.
Good.
So I don't need a prescribed. Is it prescribed or proscribed? I think it's prescribed story in an RPG.
I agree.
CRPG at least. So in Skyrim, right? When I was playing Skyrim, I ignored the main quest completely. Just did side quests until I was like level 50 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I usually actively dislike the main storyline in
Yeah,
most
me too.
RPGs. I'm just,
Me too.
it's not interesting. All I want are these little side quests. I want the whole
Yeah.
game to just be side quests, right?
Yeah.
So yes,
But
they're
yeah, I mean, it's similar. What I really want is something to make that core game meaningful, right? Like I just want to layer on the core game being whatever. In Skyrim, it's gonna be, you know, fighting and exploring, and you know, the things that you spend most of your time doing in Skyrim, right?
right.
And whatever,
And
or making, you know, whatever, making potions and upgrading your armor and all stuff, crafting.
right. So actually, let's talk about that a little bit. So if we talk about what is your what are you doing in Rogue, for example? Rogue, or actually,
Mm.
I'm not even going to go into Rogue likes, but Rogue clones, right? Moria
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
or maybe Rogue was a clone of Moria. But anyway,
Mm.
however that worked.
I don't remember.
What are you doing in that game? Why are you down there? Why are you down in the dungeon doing whatever the hell you're doing, drinking dangerous potions that you don't know what they do, and fighting these monsters and stuff? You're just trying to survive as long as you can, right?
Yep. Sure. I mean, you have an overarching goal of finding,
which is
finding an amulet, which is way down on some level, and carrying it back to the top.
Is that what it is?
Yes, you can win. That's the real goal, is to win.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I never had any hope of winning.
That's right.
So I
mean, you have to play a long time. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's all about survival for sure. Like you don't even have to know, as we just saw. You don't even have to know that amulet is there as your goal. You're just trying to survive. But if you learn to survive long enough, you'll find it, and then you'll try to make your way back to the top with it. Mm. Right.
So that's is that what you're looking for in this style of game?
Not necessarily.
I mean, do you want to be able to win it?
No, not necessarily. I think there are lots of other ways you could. You can.
But you want your but you want your experience to be very finite, very right.
Yeah, I mean, probably. I probably do. Yeah, I mean, I probably do want to be able to win. Yeah, but I don't. I don't know if I want to. I don't want to over
constrain it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I don't want to over constrain it, because I see the appeal of Skyrim, of not winning. You know, it's because I still think that the over game adds meaning to those little instances of the core game. That's all I want, in whatever form you can make that work. So back to Diver Down and Fuji-san. I still want to talk more about that. Is that, I mean, do you have interest in that? Like, is Diver Down just more of a long-term project? Like, so why wouldn't you choose Diver Down as your current project? Is it just what happened to bubble up into your brain?
Partly, and also because I think it's a more difficult transition.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
So you're taking one step at a time.
The Fuji-san transition is fairly straightforward to me. Although I did take a leap that I don't know. I think, you know, sometimes I think, oh yeah, anybody would think of this, and you've contradicted me a few times. When I think something is, well, that's obvious. Anybody would do this. If you're going to take Fuji-san and turn it into a puzzle RPG, of course this is what you get, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually a great. To me, that's like design gold, when the thing seems so obvious to you, and then it turns out it really isn't obvious to other people. It means that your particular mind clicked in. Unless you're suggesting that means you're on a wrong track, you know, that it's more quirky.
No. Because I think
it's great.
Well, I arrive at such things through an aha moment.
Yeah.
So I just don't have any sense of ownership over those aha moments.
I know. Yeah, exactly. They feel like discoveries, right? Not like inventions.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. That's a great way to put it. So I feel like, oh, if anybody else applied it, they may or
Right.
may not get to it, but they're just
Right.
as likely as I am
Yep.
to
Yep.
arrive
Yep.
at that same moment.
Totally.
Um, so I had previously thought about making an electronic version of Diver Down for a single player.
Okay.
I hadn't really considered before the two-layer structure that we're talking
Okay.
about because I just hadn't kind of gone that far.
Yeah.
Um, but but I mean, so when I start thinking about that, lots of things like blockades come up immediately to my mind. Um,
Right. The like
so
translating, figuring out how to translate that into a single player experience. You
not
mean?
single player even so much as
Okay.
moving it to an electronic experience.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's more challenging than making it. And you maybe that sounds strange, but I think things like trying to play Carcassonne as an electronic game, where the board shape is built as you go, like happens in Diver Down.
Yep.
And I don't think it works.
I see.
Uh,
Okay.
you
The
get
board
these.
the board sprawls too much, and you start zooming out and whatnot.
Yeah. Now
Yeah.
for Diver Down, of course, originally I had a board. And so that's the most
Right.
obvious thing is
Yeah.
you take
Constrain
your
it.
boat to a bay and you
Yeah.
get a screen that is that the shape of that bay, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I think there are certainly ways around it, and they actually make it more kind of concrete.
Yeah.
They remake it kind of
I
do it
know.
more concrete.
They 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 make it.
Damn it! Now I want to play
Yeah.
it. uh,
They make
so
it back to the good way before I got my sticky,
before
my
you
grubby
ruined it,
little fingers in there.
before you ruined it and made it into a
Yep.
great game that we both love, actually,
Yep.
actually, so well, yeah, that's overstating it, of course. But yeah, the
What?
because but it did
The word
lead to
ruin?
that
Yeah.
path, the path of hey, of exploring a version that I thought you might like.
Yeah.
Eventually led to the key, which for this version I felt was removing the
Removing
board
the board.
from
Yeah.
the board game.
Yep.
To me, that was a key thing, and that implied some other things, and it kind of yeah, I consider that thing done.
Yeah. Me too.
I like it.
Me too. And it's board
So
game.
that's
It's still
the
board
I
game
hadn't
for it.
really.
It's still got a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
work
yeah.
to do on
So
the
yeah,
computer RPG.
it does,
Yeah.
but I think you've got. I think it's a great idea. I hadn't really
Yeah.
considered it in that two-layer
Okay.
approach, but I think I would really like to play that.
I would too.
Um,
Yep.
okay, so let's
So,
wave
so
our
okay,
magic
so let's go back
wands
to,
and
but let's go back to Fuji-san then. Like, so I had some other questions about. I mean, you can, as much or as little as you want to say about that particular vision, like how you use. But like, I was curious in general what you thought about AI players. Like, so that's a thing that Puzzle Quest introduces, right?
yeah.
Is an opponent that's taking turns, and so. Is that part of the vision for Fuji-san? And I had some other thoughts about that as well. But first, that question.
No.
It's not.
And here's why. I actually just discussed this with Chris last
Okay.
night, and you've again hit an item on my
Yeah.
design goal list.
No, yeah. Well, I can see
And
it. I can see it right here, and I can see it in the window behind you, the reflection. No, I'm lying.
I gotta go check. Oh, which you know what? I miss seeing your sex toy on the sofa.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Because
Well,
you're using a different.
no, it's in the wash. It's in the washing machine.
I'm glad you're paying attention to hygiene.
Yep.
If anybody wonders what the hell I'm talking about, go back and watch episode 2.
Yeah.
Look at the crazy sex toy on the
Yeah,
couch.
it's sitting out there where I used it last.
All right, so are you ready for the big reveal here?
Yeah.
Okay, hang on. Let me see if I can. There you go.
What the hell is
Got
that?
it?
Is that some version of Fuji-san?
Yes, it is. Now, if I
Damn. Okay.
scroll over here, you can see the enemy. The enemy actually plays over here. So, to answer your question, no, the
Oh.
enemy does not play on your board.
Yep.
And
Okay.
the reason is I want to give the player more control than you've got in Puzzle Quest.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So I don't want anybody else dicking around on your board. Now you see this in Marvel Puzzle Quest, the newest one.
Yeah.
In Marvel Puzzle Quest, there's this marked difference between two styles of enemies. There are enemies that play on your board, and there are enemies that do not play on your board.
What are the ones what are the ones that do not play on your board do in general terms?
I don't even understand what they do.
Okay.
They just sort of collect some gems without affecting your board any.
Okay.
You'll just on their turn, they take turns. You'll see their turn happen, and then next to them, I don't know what the mechanic because I haven't studied it or looked it up.
Yeah. Okay.
But you'll see like, oh, this guy got 3 green and 2 pink or whatever. Now here's why this is really frustrating in the Marvel Puzzle Quest, because the enemy attacks work like this. They add gems to your board with a little countdown timer. So they work like the bombs in Hexic.
Yep. Yep.
Or bombs in some other puzzle games I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean there are bombs. There's a version of that in Bejeweled, in the latest Bejeweled game.
Okay. So when you get that in conjunction with the enemies that mess with your board, you're planning how you're going to get rid of these essentially these countdown bombs, and it is so fucking frustrating for them to, wreck your plan for getting rid of those. That it turns me off enough that it really is, and I don't want that. I want to, in general, give the player a lot more control. So only you are playing on your board. The enemy is not. They're not playing a puzzle. Let's see. So in the current design, which you can see is only paper prototyped. So you've got your grid over here that you're playing on. Okay, the enemies. Possible actions you can see here. They basically they're kind of playing on a 1-column version of the game.
I see.
Okay, so you can see what they might be doing next, right?
Yep.
They're going to choose like one of those 5 or 6 actions, but they're doing it separately. It's not going to affect your board.
Got it.
Now they might be able to throw things on your board, like freeze some, through special powers they have. They might be able to do something like that, but they're not actually making plays on your board. That answers that question. Next.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, more generally.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about. I mean, to me, it's a really interesting topic. Why I feel that these board games that I really like don't seem to translate very well. Like I feel like they're very dry. I mean, like Settlers and Ticket to Ride and stuff and Carcassonne and stuff like that. And I also find it pretty dry to play against computer AI in general. So like I have this overall sense that I prefer it when in computer games when it's unequal forces. Like I prefer it if the computer is doing something, if it's something that's quite different from what I'm doing, or but these are vague. I don't know. I haven't unpacked all this stuff yet. I don't know why that is. Like in general, I really like to go back to what I said earlier about struggling against a system, right? Whereas like in vanilla Bejeweled, it's like you're really just playing against a random number generator. It's like this thing that drops in the random gems whenever I like, or so for instance in the Take It Easy suggestion, so Take It Easy is a game that lends itself very well to multiple actors who get the same tiles in the same order, and they have to put them into their own unique boards, in their different ways. So, like, if that would be an immediate question if I were designing that game, a Take It Easy RPG. Would I
Hmm.
is it battle based? Do I have a an enemy AI opponent that is getting the same tiles that you are getting, and it's putting it into its board, and then like when it makes a pipe, that's an attack on me, and when I make a pipe, it's an attack. That's like I feel like that's the easy way to go, and because it's already been done, it already sort of is designing itself in my mind as I'm
Right.
describing
Right.
it. And I'm not sure that's the right way to go. And I don't know
So,
how to answer that question. I don't know.
well, so there are precursors for that. Right. You've got Puyo Puyo or versus Tetris, or right.
Mhm.
So you've
Mhm.
got there are head-to-head puzzle game. Puzzle Fighter would be
Right.
another one,
Right.
or
Do
fighting in Puzzle Pirates.
do those tend to work for you? Is
Nope,
that right? I think they don't for me either. Why? Why is
but they
this?
do for a lot of people.
They do for a lot of people. Yeah.
Well, okay, so in those cases, I mean, in most of those cases, you can either play against another person, right, versus another person, or substitute the AI if you're playing by yourself. Um, why don't they work for me? Well, for me, partially, it's the competitive thing.
Okay.
I don't like competition.
Right.
I can
But
almost say that. I can almost say that with just a period at the end
yeah.
of the sentence.
Yeah.
Um, so I might not be a good example.
Right.
Maybe we
But
should.
you're okay. How do you feel about the Puzzle Quest opponents?
Well, do you mean how do I feel? So I feel like it doesn't give me enough control. In one
Right.
way, that makes sense, right? They're affecting the tide of battle or whatever,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? I mean,
It. Yeah. I suppose. I
as
mean, it
far
makes
as
it.
thematically, I don't find a problem with it.
Right.
But
No.
as a
I'm talking.
player
I'm
and
talking
enjoying
mechanically.
the play experience, I do have a problem with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
mechanically, I don't enjoy that so
Okay.
much.
Good.
I would prefer what I'm designing,
Yeah.
which
Well. Yeah.
is
I mean,
you can see. Mhm.
what I've seen already,
Go ahead.
I'm already a lot more excited about Fuji-san now that I see because I was still picturing this two by whatever, so it looks like you've got a full
No,
on
no,
like a
no.
square. Yeah, so I mean I got a much better picture now of what we're talking about.
Oh, by
Uh,
the way,
yep,
it's a very short interjection here.
sure,
I had also considered a while back just making a simple puzzle version of Fujisan, in which you've got two rabbits, and so you've got a square grid of numbers, and a rabbit can move onto a tile if it's moving the number of spaces
yep,
as matches the number,
yep,
and you just tap a tile, and the one eligible rabbit that can go to that tile goes there. You keep going until you get both of your rabbits in the same tile. Uh, that that right there is kind of where this square grid thing is
yeah.
coming from.
Wow, have you tested that? Like done a
No, I
paper
have not.
test or anything? Yeah.
I have not. So, and obviously these can be programmatically generated.
Yep.
The puzzles, the layers, and of course you can do different shapes. You don't have to just have a square grid. You
Yes.
can have,
Yeah.
right. And in fact, if it was more fun, you could put it on a hex grid and make different shapes out of your hex grid and stuff.
Absolutely.
Um, the thing to overcome there is uh, 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 that Fujisan has trapdoors. It has you can
Yeah.
pass a point, right,
Sure.
and then you either reset, right. Uh,
Yeah. This is the
so
Blockhouse thing.
exactly right. So oh, that's interesting. Uh, that would be something to address because I
Yeah.
don't like I don't mind that in Fujisan. For some reason,
Okay.
I don't mind that in Meat Space as much.
I
It's
see.
more like a Klondike feel, you know,
Yeah,
solitaire. You're playing, and
yeah,
I got stuck. Too bad. Um, but it bothers me a lot more in
yeah,
electronic
yeah.
puzzle games.
Well, yeah. So I mean, I'm gonna guess that you can write an algorithm that will just
I think
generate
so.
generate
I think so.
boards for you that don't have trapdoors.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, yeah, but ultimately, I kind of didn't pursue it just because I didn't really feel there was like a space for it. Like I don't know if there would be that many people that would be interested in it. Even
yeah,
like
I
a
mean
niche.
that's a really tough call because like um, why isn't that as good as free as threes? You know what you just
Yeah, or
described.
drop seven. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
so I would never have guessed that those puzzles would have become popular.
I know. That's my point. Is
Well,
like,
right. So that means I
but
need to reconsider this. But
yeah,
you know, they were. This was before. This was like a year ago or something. I
yeah,
started considering
yep.
it.
But I mean, it's going back to our episode one conversations of like why do these things get popular? And I mean, you're playing a lottery. Well, it depends on what your goal is. If if your hope is to make money, if you need to make money to support doing that project, then you might be in trouble. But
Yeah.
to do it, so, but it's I think that kind of stuff is worth doing. So in the context of the current conversation.
Hmm.
I'm suddenly in this mode of like I don't want to do those simple games anymore. I mean, I want to take that rabbit game immediately and say, okay, that's the core game of one of these RPG games, right?
Yes, me too.
Um,
That's why I'm like much more interested in
yeah,
designing this other game.
yeah. I mean, and maybe there's a lot of things going on. Like um, maybe it's just a thing where we've been doing this for many years now, and maybe I want something a little bit higher. I mean, I've been saying, I've been feeling for years that I would like to try to do something that a bit more thematic, um, and yeah, whatever, not so simple and dry or whatever. There is an interesting thought I had of like. Um, at first I was gonna say that this whole idea could also protect you from cloners a bit because that overgame is it's a lot more work, right? So,
Yes,
but then
true.
I thought like if you do design if your game contains a core, an original core that you designed that actually can stand on its own, then like maybe the cloners are just gonna rip that out, and then that game will get more pop. It's so hard to do anything that gets popular though. Like, is it really a fear? Is your rabbit game actually going? That was your initial instinct, is that it's not gonna be popular. Um,
Popular
so
wasn't it. It just that maybe this is being served by other games that would be similar enough. You know,
hmm,
that they don't. Well, and also, yeah, mostly I'm distracted by these other things
yeah,
that sound more fun to me. But
yeah,
I want to talk about. I want to talk a little bit about what you were talking about as we're sort of uh, evolving as designers,
yes,
right? And getting more interested in some of these things. Um, and the boy, how to get into this though? uh, the simpler stuff. Um, it's kind of like I went through this process of simplification, right? Simplifying my designs and stuff, and you were an influence in that, right?
yeah,
Um, kind of caring more about distilling the experience.
right,
For me, that was a big part of it.
right,
But I was also very much interested in the end product. Okay.
Yeah.
And we've talked in maybe it was episode 1 about this weird thing my brain does where it's like, what does the end product look like, right?
Yeah.
What does this look like sitting on a shelf, and how much does it cost, and all that kind of stuff, right? So as I'm becoming an old man, I am trying to shuck off that stuff. I care less and less about that kind of stuff. And what I
Okay.
care more and more about is just making stuff that I love playing.
Right.
And so for me, that's where, like, I would enjoy playing this little bunny game,
Yes.
Bunny Kiss, I think. But I would love even more having this RPG version
Yeah.
that's
Exactly.
based on the Fuji-san puzzle. And so, even though I know that I can complete the little bunny puzzle version,
Yeah.
and I could put that out, and it would be a thing on a
Yep.
shelf,
Yep.
digital shelf, that has less of a hold on me now as I'm getting older. And
Yeah.
I even though I probably won't ever finish this RPG version, I'm like, fuck it, I will have
Yeah.
more fun aiming at the puzzle or the RPG version than I will have completing the little bunny puzzle version.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you have any of that going on?
I have a ton of that's really what's going on. Well, and
Is that wrapped up in your money and
for
recognition?
sure. Yeah, it's coming from a different angle. It's like we're both shucking off some things that we cared more about in the past. So maybe slightly different things, but yeah, I mean it's
Yeah.
well.
Okay.
So one of the things that I'm realizing for me, and this is where I think you and I have had we're a bit different in our tastes as far as board games go, because I've always been I've always been more attracted to whatever these really simple designs on the board game side, where you tend to be a little bit more underwhelmed, I think, by these games. Like, what were a few of the ones I mentioned where you like Cartagena? Do you like that game?
Yeah, I like Cartagena. Yeah.
Okay. What one did?
Yeah, I like it.
Take it easy.
Do I love it? I don't know if I love it. Yeah,
Right.
Take It Easy. Lost Cities was the other. Lost Cities is fine.
Okay. Fine. Right. That's what you say about a lot of these games, right?
Yeah, really, it's true. Yeah, they're fine. I don't mind playing them.
Right.
I get some enjoyment out of them. They're like in the whatever, like a 6. I think my rating for Lost Cities would be like a 6.
Right.
So partly that is because. Okay, so partly that stems from my lack of competitive drive.
Right.
So if you take out, so in a lot of multiplayer games, if you take out if I'm not seriously competing, which pisses some people off, by the way.
Yeah.
But if I'm like, oh, that's not what's interesting to me. What's interesting to me is, let me see if I can do this.
Yeah.
Which doesn't necessarily aim at winning the game, but I'm exploring the system itself, right?
Yes.
That's usually much more interesting to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in Lost Cities, it isn't. If you're not really competing, there's not really anything to explore in that game.
Right. So, but okay.
And I would further say that in general, two-player games are like that. I'm less interested in two-player games, and then of course Take It Easy is a one-player game. It's not, as you pointed out, you're comparing your scores or whatever, but largely it's what I would consider a one-player game.
Of course, yeah. But so is Hexic, and you like Hexic. This is the thing I keep pushing.
And we went through this last episode. Hexic is an electronic game. I'm not sitting around making people wait for me to make a decision.
All that stuff. No, I get it. I got that. Okay. So that's the thing. Like, so for me, so for whatever reasons, that stuff is more. I'm more okay with it in head-to-head game, whatever. I mean, in tabletop setting. And I'm looking for that similar juice. So this was part of the point I'm making is like for me, Hexic is fine, right? Like I feel like
Okay.
I feel about Hexic the way you feel about a lot of these, on the tabletop side of things, and that's what's so interesting to me is I feel like adding the overgame is the way, or for me it's the most appealing way to bring that back in, like to bring the thing back in that that I like about the board, that I feel on the board game side. Where was I going? I feel like I had another point there. So I guess I was just saying that, like, I mean, we were talking, just, and all that plays into the fact that even though I've always been this like simplicity, elegance, really kind of mechanics focused designer, I've come around to this position where I'm just not interested. I'm not very interested in making a game like the Little Bunny game you were just talking about as a standalone thing on the computer anymore. Because I feel like I will feel about it the way I feel about Hexic or Vanilla Bejeweled. That it's fine, but it's missing something for me. And I think that, in fact, I don't know if you remember. Do you remember years ago? I mean, I wasn't always convinced about Bejeweled. Years ago, I wrote an email to you and Kristen Matherly and Dave and a few other people, and I was like, "Can you explain Bejeweled to me? Because I don't get it. I've played, what this is so dry or whatever, like it really took me." And you and Kristen both immediately mentioned Puzzle
Gave you the
Quest,
same answer,
right? Is that the answer
right?
you're remembering?
Maybe we did.
You both immediately said.
I remember Kristen and I gave you the same answer, which was we like finding things.
Right.
That's
okay.
the answer that we gave you.
Yeah. Okay. But
we may have also mentioned Puzzle.
You did both. Yeah.
Was probably concurrent. Yeah, it was probably at the same time.
And so it wasn't until
Quest was first.
it was only when I played Puzzle Quest that I started to appreciate Bejeweled, and then I was able to go back and play plain old Bejeweled, and I enjoyed it more. Some of it was like.
How does that make sense?
Because that's an interesting question. It's because, remember how I said that Take It Easy by itself on a computer doesn't feel meaningful to me, right? And so we've talked about the multiple layers that are there in Bejeweled, right? But I was never interested enough to see those layers, because Vanilla Bejeweled, I didn't understand why I was playing. I was like, the score didn't mean anything to me, and I didn't really understand what I could do to, like, I was just playing just play until there are no more moves and then you lose, right? Like the really classic Bejeweled.
Okay.
And I didn't see.
Yeah.
Maybe I just didn't care enough about that goal. But so there was nothing to make me really start learning how to set up moves and find cascades and stuff like that. So that's my answer there.
That makes sense.
And that's what the overgame will do for me in almost any of these hypothetical situations.
Yes. There are other ways to do that.
Right.
That are less work.
But will they work? Will they work for me though?
I don't know if they do or don't they.
I don't know. Like achievements.
Right. So.
Achievements?
No.
Okay.
So if we're specifically talking about Match 3, right? There are several Match 3 games where, let's see, what was the one that I really liked? Not Seven Wonders. Damn it. Anyway, some version of Match 3 where each board, to clear the board, to win the board, you had to paint the background, right? So you make a match. Sure. And those 3 or 4, however many you matched, anything that matches you make, paint the background.
Yep.
For those cells. And you win the board by painting. So playing like that version does show you how to
I
it
agree.
encourages you to do the set up, the cascading and stuff like
Yep.
that.
That just happened to be
Uh,
not the version that I played back then. It was
right.
like I was playing plain old Bejeweled, probably first version, but not even Bejeweled 2, you know.
Yeah. There are other ways to do it. I think the second layer is a way to do it that I'm
Yeah.
really interested in. But
Yeah.
I feel like you've maybe just walked around a difference in
Between a different, what kind of
yes,
difference?
between you and I,
Yes.
and it might have to do with the which base activities we enjoy, because the
Yes.
base activity in Take It Easy is not that compelling for me,
Right.
or in Lost Cities is not that compelling for me.
Correct. And
But
they
the
are to
base
me.
activity, right, and the base activity in Match 3 is compelling to me.
I see.
Um, Even if we take out things like cascading
Okay.
and setups,
Yeah.
just the very basic thing of my brain just looking at the board and say under time pressure,
Yeah.
because you got to add something else in there, right?
Right.
Of picking out, oh, here are the possible moves. That for
Yeah.
me is enjoyable, is an
Okay.
enjoyable activity.
Got it.
So I do think there's some in some of the cases that's why
Yeah.
you're going to say, this game is fine. Like Hexic. In Hexic, same thing.
The
I
same thing.
like
Yeah.
finding those matches. I mean, it's very similar to a match 3, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It is a match 3, actually. It's just a hex-based match 3. So that in some cases, that I think that's going to explain the difference why you're
Yeah.
finding something, you enjoy something a lot more than I do,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
vice versa.
And that's all good. I
And that's
mean,
fine. Yeah, sure.
that's right.
Absolutely.
It's a big garden. We, many flowers can grow in it. Uh, uh, it says Chance the gardener.
Actually, that's another puzzle. I started to list out like what are like these archetypical puzzle types when I started working on this
Yeah.
game to go, oh, which ones are good fits for an RPG? And actually, I hadn't thought of the flower one. It's not really called a flower one, the flower puzzle. I don't know what it's called. B cells is one version, but where you each turn, so you've got a grid. Sometimes it's played on squares, sometimes it's played on hexes, and each turn, like 3 random cells will fill in with a color. And each turn, you choose one, and then move it to another location. It has to have a clear path to get there. And then if you make 3 or more, or something, or 4 or more, different versions have
Right.
different
Yes.
prerequisites. Those disappear. So you're trying to, and eventually you can't. You get overtaken. The board just fills.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that, but that might be another example. Like
Yeah.
I'm like mildly interested in that by itself, but I might be a lot more interested in that as a surrogate activity in like an RPG.
I think for me there are lots and lots of surrogate of game mechanics. Preferably I'd like to see some original ones. I think the whole space. I mean, like I think the analog of. I'm going as far as to say, this is the bold statement, but it's like all the different forms of board games mechanics that I enjoy, like, race games and, what auction games are like. I think you could, even that, like Lost Cities, I totally think you could do analogs of that. I mean, it's a translation exercise. Ultimately, I'd like to just create more original ones, I just think that whole space is really interesting, and I want more of it, or any of it. Oh, Oasis! Yeah. I would be remiss not to mention Oasis as another example of one of these kind of games, right? At least the version that I played.
I guess so.
The most recent. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's got an overgame. Maybe it's a little bit light because. It's a little. It could be better because it really is just a series. It has a progression, but you don't actually gain. It's like I don't know. You don't gain resources in one of the on one
That's
game
what I was
board.
trying to remember.
You don't. I don't think you.
Okay.
No, you
there
don't
isn't
really.
like a carryover, is
There
I can't
is.
remember.
So it represents, I guess, about the most bare bones version of it. I mean, it still has a roguelike structure. You can lose the whole thing, right? Like you are building up. Your goal is to win. Like you're progressing through boards, and they do change. And there's a flavor to them. Like, yeah, you can just lose the whole thing. You can get like 11 boards in and then fail. And I like that. I like failure. But you're right. It's really it's on the borderline because there really isn't any extra game there in the over game. So yeah, but there could be. That's a great core mechanism.
There could.
You know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, what else was on your list? Did we hit everything on your list? We're coming up on 2 hours.
I know we gotta stop. There's. I think we kind of did.
I don't mind.
We hit everything. I think a lot of it. There's a lot of things in here I would love to keep talking about. That there's more. There's more to say about a lot of these.
Well, and
topics.
maybe we can talk more about some of these things as we get further in our designs.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
because I've got this whole list of design goals, and as I start prototyping stuff, and you get to try some of these out, maybe we can. I want to mention what did you play this week? Did you play anything new this week that you wanted to talk about?
Absolutely. I hardly played a game this week.
Okay, I want to talk about a couple little quick things. I tried this because I was out looking for puzzle RPGs, right? I tried this little game called Dungeonsweeper.
I've heard of that.
iOS game. Have you really? So
maybe not. I've heard of a game. I've heard of a game that started with the word dungeon.
There is another Minesweeper-based dungeon-themed game, which I didn't care for. But this one is super simple, and I just wish it was a better game. It's free.
Explain. You just wish.
Okay, so the implementation is terrible. First of all, so do you enjoy Minesweeper at all?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. So you're not going to get. There's no second layer in this case. Okay.
Okay.
Well, that's not true. There's as much maybe second layer as there is in the first version of Dungeon Raid, in that your character, you're playing multiple dungeon boards, right? Each dungeon dungeon floor is a Minesweeper board, okay?
Okay.
So if you take Minesweeper and you have 3 different kinds of mines: monsters, treasures, and exit, of which there's only one.
Got it.
Exit meaning stairs down to the next floor. Okay?
Yeah.
Now here, this is quite clever. So you're normally when you tap a cell and there's no mine, right? You get numbers adjacent to where you tapped, and it's showing you how many mines are adjacent. So it does this. Numbers? No, you get a number and a color. Okay. So if there's, say, one monster next to you, next to that cell, it'll actually be a red one. If there's a single treasure next to you, a yellow one. Okay? If there are 2 things, 2 treasures, it's a yellow 2. But if there is a monster and a treasure, it's an orange 2.
Okay.
That's a kind of genius. That's a little stroke of genius there. So blue, they combine.
So that is interesting. Okay, so wait, if there were 2 monsters and 1 gold, or 2 gold and 1 monster, you don't know the difference between those 2.
Correct. Yeah. That's absolutely correct.
That's interesting.
Unless you can kind of figure it out from the other cells.
Correct. Right.
So you've got this second layer of deduction going on, which is great. It's like this little tiny stroke of genius.
Yep.
Now,
where does it all go wrong? Where does it go off the rails?
When you actually, so you've got these bare bones stats. You've got like these three stats: your armor rating, your weapon rating, and your health or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And your level, which doesn't really mean anything, I don't think. Um, so when you hit a treasure chest, something random happens. Your weapon rating goes up, or your armor rating goes up, or it goes down. What the fuck is going on there? I mean,
Okay.
I've actually deduced that it's a treasure chest. Don't penalize me for that. I don't mind the traps so much. That's not the worst of it.
Okay.
Um, but when you hit a monster, you just get this dump of here's what happened. You hit for 2, then the monster hit you for 4, then you hit it for, and it
Mm.
doesn't even like go line by line and add any kind of explanation. It just goes puh with poor grammar. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But it is free. It's ad supported. I would go out just to see.
Yeah. Okay.
I wish somebody would make a clone of it and do it right.
uh,
The other thing I wanted to mention real quick was on the Ouya, I played a game called Crypt of Baconthulu,
all right.
which
Right.
which I played for way longer than it deserved.
Okay.
Maybe that's a horrible thing to say. They got this one thing so right though that I found really compelling that I want to like include this. I want to kind of explore this a little more. So each level in Crypt of Baconthulu, and it's got all kinds of pork and bacon jokes
Yeah.
all the way through it, which I will avoid, by the way, when I when I make a CRP. It does
Please.
not have jokes in it.
Please.
It doesn't
do
have
that.
cutesy graphics, and it doesn't have jokes in it.
Yeah.
But Crypt of Baconthulu, each level is essentially a maze that is fogged. So
Okay.
you clear the fog, right, going through it. So this is great. You'll be going down and you'll see this treasure chest over
Yeah.
here, but getting to it is way less straightforward than right, because it's essentially a maze. I love that. I love it. That goes back to some things that you and I had talked about in treasure hunting games, where you can see this thing. How the hell do I get there? That's what I get out of Crackdown, for example.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah.
Where like, I can see this thing. Let's see. I got to figure out how I got to go jump from that building over there, climb up there, etc.
Yeah. I love
So this
that.
is like a 2D version. You're seeing this thing. How do I get there?
And it's so simple. I mean.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
The rest of the game is very ho-hum, unfortunately.
Okay.
It's not terrible, but that's a totally free game too. So if you got a couple minutes, try out Crypt of Baconthulu.
All right.
Those were the two that I played. I also played a horrible game on the Xbox 360 called Damnation. So don't ever play it. It's
Okay.
There's my negative recommendation.
I probably
That's not nice.
won't.
Should I not do that? I don't know. Anyway.
I think that when people put their stuff out there.
I know, but I like to be nice.
Yeah. You can't be nice. You can't be nice and be a good designer, James.
Well, that's why I'm not a good designer.
That's why I'm not nice. Heyo.
That's right.
Let's let's wrap
it up. Got your peanut butter in my chocolate.
This was awesome as always.
Yep.
And
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we need to branch out, but I could keep talking about this subject for a long time, I think.
Yeah, and I think we can talk about this again as sort of things as this design evolves and as whatever one you design evolves as well. I'm gonna leave anybody that's made it this far, 2 hours. We're going to leave on a note of sorrow. You remember our little eccentric cat Piper?
Oh yeah.
She died this morning.
She gone? Oh man.
Yep. So there you go.
Great cat. Great.
She really was, and she and I were kind of really close. You know.
Yeah, I know.
When you've got 2 people in a household and you've got 2 cats, they kind of, you don't exactly pair off, but they kind of do. You know, one will gravitate often. One will gravitate toward my wife, and the other will gravitate toward me. And in this case, she and I.
You had a connection.
we had a connection, yeah.
Absolutely, man. I'm sorry to hear that, and do what you need to do to, get through it. Man.
It's a pet, but
Yeah,
these things. I'm sensitive. I'm a delicate flower.
Absolutely. No, that's a big deal, man. Yeah, sorry to hear that.
So
man.
I just mentioned it because you had spent some time with her as well.
Absolutely.
So having lived in this household for some time. So
yeah, and and then Phoebes is gonna miss her as well, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Geez, she made some mournful sounds yesterday, and you just know that they get it. I don't know.
Yep.
Wow. Anyway, there's your happy ending for the
right.
episode 3.
Yeah. Everybody's glad they stayed. No, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, that's right. There's your big payoff.
Yep.
There's the big fuck you, everybody.
Yeah.
All right, I'll talk to you next week, yeah?
Absolutely. Talk to you then. Bye.
Good night.